Ogden City Mayor Ben Nadolski, and this is the Ogden Way podcast, the place where we tell Ogden stories by telling the stories of Ogden's people. And today I want to tell a little story about this story. We were in the council chambers with Chandler Copenhaver. Did I say that right?
That's right.
And you had a neighborhood issue and concern that we helped address that night, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then after the council meeting, we walked out to our cars together.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know Chandler just a little bit, and we ended up kind of talking for quite a while in the parking lot afterward. And as time would tell, Chandler is a actor on the series The Chosen. And if you haven't seen or heard about The Chosen, it is a story about the teachings and the discipleship of Christ. Mm-hmm. And it's an enormously popular series. Very informational, right? Yeah. And it's been transformational in people's understanding of Christ's teaching and of Christianity and of history, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And right here in our own backyard, in my nearby neighborhood of my own, is an actor from The Chosen right here in Ogden. So Chandler, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing your story with me that night.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming back to share your story with the rest of the city.
No, it's a fun thing to be able to talk about.
So, and we should also say that you're not only in The Chosen, you're also in the Promised Land. Right?
Yeah. And I think I'll probably touch on that in walking through the story of it. But yeah, it's I definitely am not. Calling myself an actor still doesn't feel exactly right. But it is. It's interesting how it's progressed in a way where, all of a sudden I'm participating in these kinds of shows. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah, because you didn't start off as an actor, right?
No.
You're like a small business guy and a nonprofit guy and a community guy.
Yep.
And a husband and father. And
yeah, I was running a company. We sold that company, and then I started working for the company I was working that we sold our software company to, and I was working in crowdfunding. So people that are trying to build their business or their idea or their creative project. And it's actually interesting because the Chosen, which for those that don't know, like you said, it's like this. It's a TV show. It's TV show that is designed in a way that is very, it's not preachy. It's a drama, right? It tells the story of the characters that we all know from the Bible, and in a way that is really engaging and fun and interesting. But it's interesting because I started out as watching a small short film that the creators of The Chosen made. It's called The Shepherd, but it's like a story of a shepherd that was down on his luck, having a hard time, and then kind of makes his way to baby Jesus, kind of the story of the nativity scene and all of that. Well, they created that as like a pilot of sorts. Like, this is what we could do. We want to create a story of the story of Jesus, like the whole thing. We want it as a multi-series TV show, and but of course, doing that's really expensive, and so they went to a kind of a crowdfunding approach where they showed everyone this short film, and then they asked everyone to that want to support, and if they can reach certain amounts, then they'll be able to launch this show. And so that was back in like 2017 or 18. And
that was how you became involved? That crowdfunding request?
Kind of, yeah. So and I initially supported it as a, they called them investors, but that wasn't, I didn't back the show or anything like that in a huge way, but it was, contribution. There was about 15,000 people or something like that contributed initially, and got enough funding to then go and shoot it. And it's now just released its 5th season, and it's releasing its 6th season later this year. And so it's kind of turned into a whole cultural phenomenon of sorts.
Oh yeah. So I told you before we started the interview that when you and I met in the parking lot, I had just started season 1. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I was like, oh, I know what you're talking about. And now I'm in season 5, and I'm totally hooked on it. It's accurate. Of course, they have to fill in things, right, to make this to tell the story.
Out people and the characters.
Yeah, and it's fun to. Now that I'm going back again and reading the New Testament again, it helps me picture and understand and sort of contextualize the story of Jesus.
It makes it real,
doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. When you're like, even in the first season, there's kind of these marital back and forths with Peter, which, at the time, Simon, right, and his wife.
Yep.
Just as an example, like, you're like, oh, I can relate to that because I've had those kinds of conversations. And
right.
it makes somebody who's on paper, because reading the Old Testament or New Testament, it's older language. It's harder to understand all the cultural context,
right.
and just of who were those people, like seeing beyond, the story. It's like, those were people like us. They lived lives. They had jobs. They did their
exactly
day to day, and yeah.
But also to watch the journey of Jesus as he traveled around and shared the message, but also the way he spoke in parables and why he spoke in parables and where that comes from. And it's just an interesting, and I think this must be why it's becoming such an important movement and why it's catching so much fire.
Yeah.
Is I do think that there's a renewal around faith around the country, for one.
Absolutely.
But two, I think shows like this help make it real and help people connect with the message of it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it has to. I think that's always been the challenge, from any type of faith perspective is again, it's kind of this archaic language, or maybe it's hard to really put yourself in the shoes of the stories that are being told, and also not just the stories, but like the lessons that are being, that are being shared. And it's one thing that they just did such phenomenally well within the show is that it's first and foremost a really engaging and it's great to watch, right? Like they did really well with the production and all of those things, which, unfortunately a lot of faith-based content over the years wasn't that way. Like as a general standard, you almost kind of think of, movies or shows that you've seen, and a lot of them are kind of cheesy or kind of overdone or a little too preachy or a little too this or that.
Sure.
And so the one thing that I think that they found that common balance between, a really well-produced TV show, but that also happens to have the proper amount of accuracy. And
that's a hard.
Oh man, yeah, it's a tightrope.
Yeah.
So it was something that's what really compelled me or drew me to it. Like I said, they weren't even showing Jesus in the initial. I guess they did the baby, but it's just the nativity story initial show. But the way that they did it was gritty. It was real. It was kind of seeing perspective of the world from this little shepherd's life, and so I guess that's what drew me in initially and compelled me to want to support them so that hopefully they can create it. And I'd worked in that space so long with the crowdfunding. I'd seen so many. Oh, that looks nice, but it's probably not going anywhere, or But I had a strong feeling that this was going to go somewhere, and so I supported it in that way. And then, of course, as these things are, it goes years until that's fully produced and ready to be shown. And so I followed along, and they released season 1, and yeah, it was amazing.
It was really good.
Yeah, I mean the music that they've done in it. I mean, they've just done a fantastic job.
Yeah. So, and it's produced by Angel Studios. Right?
Initially, yeah. So it's kind of an interesting story, Genesis, and I'm sure there's other ways to learn the full story because I'm not privy to all of it. But Angel Studios is who helped assist in that crowdfunding initially.
Okay.
It was through Angel, and so one of the co-founders of The Chosen is his name's Daryl, and he's a Utah native and really well known, and so him and Dallas Jenkins. Dallas is kind of the main person at the forefront and running the company. He's the director and writer of the show, they're great men in the sense that there's no focus other than like how do we tell this story authentically and help draw people in. Their hope is, of course, that people watch the show and then are driven back to read the scripture because it's you're like, oh, is that what he meant when he said that? And then it takes you on this path of like going back and reading it for yourself.
Actually, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about the power of that. Mm-hmm. That is that's a mission and a purpose.
Oh yeah,
it's a really important one right now because this is. I'm just going to say it right now that this is an opportunity for me to talk about faith and without it being weird. Mm-hmm. I guess. Yeah. Some people don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, and they don't want to see me talk about it, but I have my own practices and beliefs, and I'm allowed that. Absolutely. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. And so, thanks for being here and let me
of course.
have this opportunity to talk about it. But I feel like this is a thing for people to reinvigorate their faith.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely. And it's beautiful too because it's made up of many faiths, actually. So those that are participating in the production of the show, you have, so Dallas, who I mentioned, director of the show, he's one of the three, there's three writers to it. And they do an incredible job, but they're all kind of different faith backgrounds, right? So Dallas is an evangelical Christian, and worked on other faith-based projects, but this is kind of his kind of core mission. And Daryl is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints. The guy who plays Jesus, Jonathan, who does such an amazing job, and so he's Catholic, Roman Catholic, I believe. And so you get this mixing of different faiths coming together, and really it's rallying around one thing, which is,
Christianity and
God,
and Jesus
and
Christ,
belief, and I think that there's an interesting reason, I think, why there's a revival on average just across the nation and in our world is in part because kind of need it. There's a lot of hardship, pain, a lot of suffering. It's really been beautiful to watch these things unite in a way that we're not worried about what our differences are. We're more worried about, like, where do we share common ground, and what do we all believe and want to do better.
And you're not even worrying about it; you're celebrating around it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So when you just said something really profound, I don't even know if you recognize how significant it is, but part of the reason there's a big renewal and revival around faith is because it's needed. It's needed because people are hurting and there's a lot of suffering. And it's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I totally agree. I think people are looking for a foundation, something to lean on when things are hard, right?
Yeah.
When you go through hard things in life, you retreat back to your fundamentals and your foundation. And for those of us that don't have that foundation, it's a good time to firm it up, right? That's where I found myself. And my suffering and struggles right now are totally different than others. I'm struggling with stress and pressure and, political attacks and this, that, and the other. And
it's all seasons, right?
We all have our own challenges. That's part of the human experience, right?
Yeah.
But we all have to have that foundation to lean on. And you lean on your family and your friends and your neighbors, community, and faith. So the timing is so good for this show.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a heart to it in a way that allows conversations to open, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's that you mentioned that in a way that I have friends, that we don't see the same, we don't go to church together. We don't maybe practice the same thing, or actually don't know. Sometimes I would almost say we don't believe the same thing, but I actually don't know that, because often we're not even talking about that. We're not opening that conversation enough that we even know what each other believe or think, and that being able to open that dialogue and have that conversation is so important, because it turns out it's like, oh, we're more alike than we thought. We're going through similar, different challenges, but similarly struggling, and similarly, needing an outlet and support from another place, support from on high, if you will. And, even those that have not even Christian religion, right? Like, I know some of the other actors, some of the main people in the show, there's others that are not of the same faith. I think there's some in Hindu and somebody, the different faiths as well. And so it's really great to say, what we're trying to do is rally against the difficulties we're going through together, as a community and with faith.
What an amazing way to spend your life, your time on the earth, and to make sure that you're investing yourself and your time and your energy and your attention into something that matters and that counts for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. So
we've talked about how it strengthens the faith of others as an actor on the set, and we should just say, so in The Chosen, you're was it season 3 or 4 that you first?
Yeah, I jumped in pretty late stage. It's kind of a funny story. I have a friend that's in the casting, and they were looking to add more background actors, right? Extras, you might say. So I just saw, again, I wasn't a part of it at all for, I think this was season 5, actually.
Was it really?
Yeah, okay. It wasn't until 5, and so halfway through 5, they're filming here in Utah. So they film half of it here in Utah, kind of down by Sanhedrin, It's in Goshen, Utah.
Out in the West Desert.
Yeah, just kind of way out there, and the LDS Church has created a replica of Old Jerusalem, and they used it for their own films like 15, 20 years ago, and built.
That's how that set came about.
Yeah, so they built it as a permanent structure, and even that has a cool story behind it, and just the fact that the church felt that it was going to be not just utilized for this one thing that they were filming, and so they felt strongly impressed to build it as a truly permanent structure. I mean, a lot of times sets like these are put up and then taken down. Any of the big movies that we watch, they're usually built that way. But this was built, as a permanent structure, and it's quite the sight to behold. Honestly,
that's interesting because
it's really beautiful.
As a viewer, I was watching it, knowing about the crowdfunding that you told me about, and knowing kind of the production behind it and the mission of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, that's a really expensive set.
Yeah. Because
at first I was like, is that AI in the background? But then I remember the scene where Jesus rides in on the donkey, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
And they come in from afar. And you're like, is that AI in the background? And you're like, that's a real set. They walk on the steps. So now I know why.
Yeah, they built, they built it to last, and so it's been really cool. And even that has its own unique story. The church actually said, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints said no to the first 3 or 4 requests because they didn't start using it till season, I think, 2. The first season was filmed completely in a farm somewhere in back east, but because most of the team is from kind of the Tennessee to Texas area. They're not from Utah initially, except for Daryl, but they were like, we need a set to film Jerusalem, and you don't want it to feel like this small little kind of put up thing for the scale that they wanted to make it feel real, and then they found this set, walked around and toured it a number of times, but the church said no, actually, initially. And then it finally got to the right individual. It was it's a really cool story to watch. They tell that story. Dallas tells that story in a video, but it was what he calls a Red Sea moment, where it's kind of like Moses. You walk up to the Red Sea, and it's like, I can't pass this, I can't.
Oh, wow.
And so they're very prayerful though, and it opened up. The sea opened up for them, and they were able to get to use that set and have used it every season since. But I had a buddy, like I said, that was in casting, and he was like, sent out a thing. It's just one of those random moments I saw that they needed men with beards, and I was like, well, I have one of those. I'll it'd be cool to be a part of it.
I don't think mine would count. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not very period.
You gotta grow it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Those whiskers, the wider whiskers. I got
a lot of work to do.
But it was kind of a funny thing because it was just like a last minute. They needed an extra couple people, and so I just joined on. Like I said, I had no experience in movie or movie world, acting, TV, and so I joined on for a day. They accepted me. They said, "Can you be here tomorrow?" And I went down and it was going to be a cool experience. I thought, and I thought it was just going to be a one day, kind of a fun thing to do. Especially being a fan of the show, I was like, I want to be in that, support that, and it sort of turned into a whole lot more. That one day turned into like a whole week, and had some incredible experiences while I was there. But it's kind of like we were talking about. It's like you get to put on the apparel. I didn't have long hair like this at the time, so I just had
the beard.
In fact, half the beard I have now too. It wasn't even that long.
And you're playing the part of a Pharisees, right?
Yeah. In this particular time down there, I was actually just I was a background actor, and so the background actors are kind of fun because you get to you show up and they're like, you're going to be this today, right? It's like it's it's a little different where I don't have lines or anything like that. So I went, and that first day I was just a scared citizen. I say scared because we filmed these normal scenes in a marketplace, and that was really cool. And I'm seeing, the set and how everything works, and just learning it all. But that night they said, "Hey, who can stay and stick around?" And they ended up filming the. And this may be a slight spoiler, but it's all documented. It's all
been out there for a while.
Yeah, but they filmed the destruction of Jerusalem, which was a flash forward. Jesus kind of sees sort of a flash forward, if you will, of the Romans coming in and wiping, everybody out. And so they put some big gash in my forehead, and I was all bloodied because we were these citizens kind of running away from the Romans. And we filmed until like 2 a.m. So it was like I was there for like 15 hours or something. And that was my first day, interacting with a set of any kind. And it was incredible, transporting yourself again into this first century, putting yourselves in the shoes. And so from that point, though, it sort of turned into more. They ended up requesting me to, like you said, be a Pharisee. They flew me to Texas, and I was a part of the Sanhedrin, which is kind of like the Supreme Court of the Jews. It's a big gathering of all the men dressed, you've seen them dressing their Pharisee robes.
That's where I saw you the most prominently.
Yes.
There was that moment in the temple, right, where they were kind of
deciding what to do, and
right?
Yeah.
And you were like right front and center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm one of those Pharisees there, and technically I'm a Sadducee, which I didn't know the difference between a Sadducee and a Pharisee, but the difference is pretty minuscule, but they were religious leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Sadducees being a little bit more attuned to certain doctrine, but focused on their relationship with Rome and wanting to protect so they're more politically engaged. And then you had the Pharisees that were a little bit more letter of the law. We kind of know Jesus talks a lot about them as being too concerned about the details and less concerned about the people. And
too technical about adherence to the laws instead of the practice and service of forgiveness of sins. And
so it's so funny, kind of like you said, it's like the need that we have for faith in our modern day. A lot of people would say, well, why would I need to know those stories from 2,000 years ago? Because they don't really connect to the modern day. They don't really, but it's like how they connect so well.
It actually does, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because what you just explained with the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees is this is what Jesus saw as this disconnect, right, between the spiritual teachings of God and how we live those teachings in that model of the vision of God on this earth, right, versus how they were interpreting it with very rigid, more of a technical interpretation of adherence to these rules and laws will give you access to the kingdom of heaven, etc. Right?
Right. Absolutely. I've had a lot of time to think about that because dressing up in it, and then, like I said, that kind of from an acting perspective, I was doing more acting at that point, right? I was all of a sudden not just guy running in the background or something, but a little bit more in the front, and we had something we were trying to create visually and artistically, but it also gave me a chance to really think through, like, turns out it's actually really easy to become the Pharisee, right? It's actually much more difficult to follow this, this upstart Jesus guy that comes in. I say that because at the time, like, the people are looking at him like, who are you to be saying these things and doing these things? And it really kind of rubbed against, the norms of the time and a lot of the cultural structure and everything. But he basically is like, you guys have gone too far with some of these things, and you've forgotten the core purpose, to love God and to love your neighbor, to love those around you. And so it's been a really interesting reflection point for me to say, okay, how close am I getting closer to the Pharisee side of things, in the way that I'm perceiving or the way that I'm maybe interacting with others?
Sure.
Or am I trying to, find center with what God, is taught through Jesus, and those are different. They really are. And so it's to live in it helped me start thinking more that direction, and what is it can I do to make sure that I'm not being more like the Pharisee?
Yeah. So if The Chosen is a vehicle for, or a platform, it's in the popular culture and the mainstream presence now. It helps us to understand and contextualize the times, because they use kind of modern language mixed with language from the times,
right? Yeah,
in a really good way that you almost have to like pay attention to notice it. But what it does is it captures you, and it really helps me with my understanding and relating. Yeah, while recognizing that I'm listening to something in history, and that has really helped a lot of us and the rest of the world develop and strengthen our faith, and to go back to our roots and find our foundation. As an actor on the set, has that had an impact on your own faith, and what would that journey be like for you versus someone else like me? Yeah, it's interesting. I found myself caught up in this experience in a way that
sort of opened my viewpoints, I think, a little bit more than before. Like I said, there's so many people of different faiths and of different background, and that's really what we live amongst. All of us are different, right? But sometimes we might be a little bit more stuck to our niche and not open to having conversations or learning from each other and so it really shifted my perspectives in that regard. I started developed a lot of friendships amongst those people creating that show and as I mentioned, kind of how can I stick closer to what it is that I believe. I had this concept that like a way of thinking about this, which is like I believe, for example, I believe that if I eat healthy and exercise, that I will be happier. But I don't always follow what I believe, right?
Sure.
I believe that like investing in the stock market is a really good idea for planning for the future, but I don't necessarily apply that belief all the time, right? So there's a lot of areas in our lives that we might believe that this is a better thing for me, but just because I believe it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm stepping into that, right? And that's kind of what faith is. It's stepping into a belief. It's like, yeah, I believe that exercise and that eating healthy, right? Like avoiding my wife, we just got Girl Scout cookies, and I'm like, it's so hard to not consume a whole box of that.
At least
or
a sleeve.
two
At least
in
a
one
sleeve.
sitting. Yeah, it's near impossible to not do that.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I believe this, and that's great that I believe it, but it doesn't really translate into, it doesn't benefit my life at all or those around me unless I'm really acting upon that belief. And I think that's something that really helped me realize like you can also go too far at the same time. I can be exercising a belief, but maybe, and this is the Pharisee, right? The Pharisee in all of us, if you will, but, going maybe too far into worrying about conciseness and specifics and perfection, which is unattainable. And instead of like, realizing that we're all doing our best and people, really do want, all of us want better things. We want happiness, we want joy, we want peace. And I think you see that with Jesus. He was spending his time with those that,
that was part of why he was so criticized.
Right.
He was spending time with tax collectors and
right.
prostitutes and et cetera. And those were the people he felt he needed to engage the most to show that you could be forgiven of your sins too.
Yeah, he says he was here for the sick and not for the.
Yeah. Yeah, but it also was part of the lesson too is that we all want that happiness that you just mentioned, but we often look in the wrong places for them. Mm-hmm. And we're often too judgmental to allow for forgiveness so that others can find that happiness too.
100%.
And if we don't forgive, and for them to forgive themselves, it helps to know that God will forgive us too. As you're on the set with these actors, do you guys talk a lot about faith in your life, these things outside of the
a lot of
set, or
a lot of people there, are there for similar reasons that I was. In fact, it was really interesting to talk to. I had met a good friend through that process that was in a similar place to me. Like came here, worked a professional life. Has I have 4 children. He had a number of children, and we got to some really deep and engaging conversations that I don't know if like I said, I hadn't spent enough time doing that with those around me, and even those that I'm close with. Maybe we don't. We're spending time talking about other things and whatever it is, and so we got some really beautiful conversations that sort of I would call them life changing in the effect that like I actually sort of veered completely off of the path that I was on at the time because of not just the experience and being there and doing these things, but also because of some of the conversations I had. They really kind of changed my trajectory.
It's interesting how for some reason we don't have those conversations often.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you have to be placed in a scenario or a setting that invites it. It's kind of like this, where I don't talk like this on most of the podcasts because it's not the topic.
Mm-hmm.
But so I have a group of friends that we call it our faith fellowship, and we meet regularly every week, actually. And what we've found amongst each other is that we don't talk openly with our spouses about these things enough.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain why, but when you create a place just for that,
Mm-hmm.
specifically, it invites it,
Right.
and you feel more comfortable. And then we find that we all open up a lot more that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if that set was like that. It's like you have a built-in reason
Oh yeah.
and acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. We filmed, as I said, season 5, and that was a cool experience. They then asked for me back season 6, which we filmed last year. And it's the crucifixion season. And so we're filming what is essentially a 24-hour period. But it's covering, everything from the moment that Jesus is betrayed at the garden all the way, to the cross. And the show is set to be 7 seasons. So they'll now, they're now writing, and we're going to actually start filming. That's why I keep my hair long and keep growing it out, because the filming will begin for season 7, the final season, in a couple months actually.
Wow.
And but yeah, we filmed season 6, right? So we're filming what is the crucifixion story, right? And we've seen that depicted in different ways. There's
Mm-hmm.
The Passion and some of these other shows, and but I mean, yeah, how can you not talk about these kinds of things? I mean, that definitely drove us to, open up to each other, and so we have these really amazing experiences, and then to go back and talk about it.
So I'm sure you're limited on what you're allowed to talk about on unreleased
To an extent,
information. So I won't.
I can share some things.
Push you there,
mean, yeah, as I said, so being the background, I background actor, like, you just get placed where they need you most. And I developed a relationship with the assistant director who was in charge of the background. This is actually why, I ended up going to do that other show, which is called The Promised Land. It's the story of Moses, but it's kind of written like The Office. It's
Yeah,
kind of
that's a good way to put it.
It's like a Moses, kind of like the Michael Scott. Kind of have this. You get to see the funniness, the silliness that actually makes them more human and real to some extent. And so telling that Exodus story is what that show's doing, and completely different thing, different vibe.
Totally different vibe.
Different vibe, but very much still the same heart, where it's really focused on the authenticity and helping you put your feet in the shoes of that experience. So that one actually you can watch on YouTube. They released the whole first season on YouTube, and we filmed that in St. George actually. Season 1 was filmed down there. So yeah. So
when I was so knowing I was doing this interview, I watched the pilot, and it is funny actually. It's got a lot of satire to it. I guess you could say.
Oh yeah,
sarcasm.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the way you explained it with the
kind of a Parks and Rec, even
Parks and Rec. It's pretty funny. You have to
workplace comedy.
You don't have to know all of the stories of the Bible to pick up on the comedy, but the more you know, the funnier it is.
Yeah,
there's really
definitely.
subtle little things.
And I gone back to and watched it, a number of times, because they slide in these there's little things that are just they're silly and funny, but at the same time, and actually I'm excited for you to watch all the way through, because the final thing that we filmed on that one, there's a complete circle to the story and the way that they've produced that. But so that one's written by Mitch Hudson. He wrote it and then directed it. So he was the assistant director in The Chosen. So this is kind of how these two pieces came together.
This is your close relationship.
Yeah, okay. Been doing the background, and then he was the assistant director to the show. So he's basically my boss, on the set. And then after the fact, he's like, "Hey, do you want to come down here and spend a month in St. George, and we're going to film this, completely different but still somewhat adjacent, TV show." And it was a cool experience. But yeah, Mitch had told me, "Hey, we're going to have you back." And
so were you in the Pine Valley Mountains down there?
We had
St. George and
had a different location every week, and so 6 weeks of moving here to moving there, and so you'll notice some things if you're a Utah, resident. You know that area. I'll
pay closer attention.
Start picking out little things down there for sure.
So before we finish on Promised Land, can we go back to season 6 on The Chosen? I think so. Were you filming that when you and I met?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because you had mentioned that it was a very emotional experience on set for the actors.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you allowed to share any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I can share that we filmed basically Jesus carrying the cross through Jerusalem, right, on his procession, And I mean, it was incredible. Like the way that you get to spend time in things that maybe are quickly glossed over in other shows. It's kind of the beauty of a TV format, right? Because it's a little bit more long form. We can spend time on what's happening between characters or what's happening, and so being able to witness that, in that filming, I was a different role. So I was asked to participate as an angry citizen, and then I became like heavily featured as an angry citizen, which means that I got to be really focused on being mad at Jesus, which was not an easy thing to do, because it's the opposite of maybe how I would feel or want to react in that circumstance. However, in order for me to really get into that mode, I had to kind of put myself like, well, why would somebody be this mad? And I actually realized that we, again, kind of like the Pharisees, it's easy to kind of fall into the state of being. I was thinking, as a parent, or as different times in my life, when have I got the most angry or upset? And it's almost never am I actually angry or upset at my child, for example. I'm stressed and I have other things going on. And there's other, I'm kind of lashing out or acting out, right?
Which is when you feel the worst as a parent.
Absolutely.
You lash out at a child for something that you're carrying.
And that is not their fault, or it's far above and beyond. And that was kind of I put myself in that mode, realizing that who was this guy? This guy that was yelling at Jesus probably doesn't know much about even this guy, about Jesus or what he was teaching truly. He was probably maybe he was mad that, Jesus got his business messed up, or mad at him for something because of the turning of the tables or whatever. That part mattered less, but I realized, we have that problem where, kind of what you mentioned before, we're struggling, we're suffering, we're having a hard time, and then we fill that hole, we fill that gap with whatever it is.
Something.
Yeah, something. And oftentimes we're not filling with the best of things and the vices, if you will. And so that's kind of how I had to put myself in that position. And it wasn't easy to do, and it was a really difficult, even physically. It was all day. We filmed for 12 hours, and I was angry and clenching, and so I got a migraine and headache just from the amount of tension and just grit from that. Which is so crazy because it's the opposite of how I was feeling, but it kind of came full circle.
That's the work of being an actor, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You have to act like you're feeling one thing when you're not.
Yeah, I started taking acting lessons because I was I'm going to be filming one of the most important stories ever told. I better know what I'm doing. And after that first season of filming, I was like, wow, that was great, but I still don't really know what I'm doing. And so one of the other actors actually teaches acting in LA. And so I started taking lessons from him and have kind of leaned into that a little bit just to.
You're like, I'm going to be the best angry citizen out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Best bad guy. It's so funny though. I say bad guy, but at the same time, that's kind of the beauty of the way that they write the show, which is that there's no villains. Nobody's kind of there, twirling a mustache. It's the real people with complex needs and problems, and maybe not making the best of choices some of the times, but that's us, It's
when you read the New Testament, you read through the parables, the stories, the things. But it's such a different format. You don't have that character development, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But with this setup, with all of the seasons, the shows can change themes and stories, but it can also focus on individual followers and develop the character. But what that did in the show, when you put it all together, is it helps you understand their journey of faith too. So it develops the character and the character's faith.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also see the times where their faith falls with challenges, right? Like when Simon Peter starts to have doubts, but then he has moments of belief, and that's where his faith gets strengthened.
There's some real reasons why he's feeling that way. It makes sense why he's feeling that way, and it's cool to be able to flush out a little bit more reasonings, because we don't get a lot of that in the scriptures. You get a little bit less, understanding of the individual lives.
It's kind of more to the point, I think, isn't it? A little more direct.
Yeah, and it makes it more relatable for sure. I think that, and it is interesting because it does compel me to want to go back to okay, now that I've watched that, it's like, well, how's that go in the scriptures? Like, and now you have a different view that's a little bit more personal, and then you're trying to apply and read and study and learn and apply something, to you that.
Plus, a lot of us are reading different versions of the scripture too, so it's worded differently and has different vibe, like you said before.
For sure.
Do you, as you reflect back on this, has this whole experience been life-changing for you?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that was really interesting about it is, like I said, so I came to this already in a position that I knew what I believed, or I thought, I understood a lot of things, but it was beautiful to sort of see how that can still change and adjust and grow and flourish in a different way. And so from that perspective, absolutely. From this, I think I was mentioning, like, I had this deep conversations with a couple of friends, a couple of people that I met there, and it was really interesting to see how we all kind of felt a little bit led to be there. The way that we came together, and just the timing of it, and it was a little bit more than just coincidence. And I actually had some profound experiences from that point that led me to quitting my career. Like I said, I was in crowdfunding. I was doing this thing for 10 years and enjoying it, I guess, to an extent, but realizing that I was maybe a little off course of like what I felt my calling was. And I credit somewhat this experience to that and I think part of it was just being removed from the world, like not having a phone, not being, now we're in first century and I'm thinking about Jesus and all these things that, in a way, it sort of opened up a completely new path to me. I realized, like, time is finite. We only have so much of it. What am I going to use my time for? And I have kids that are, getting a little older. My oldest is 10, and realizing, like, the legacy we leave behind, right? And I can pick up another job to, go out and do, what I was doing, sales or, building businesses, these kinds of things. I can do that at any point, but am I doing the thing that is allowing me to fulfill what I'm saying? Like, not just belief, but like leading that into action and into faith. And so it changed my whole gears, and that's why we're now, like, I'm focusing on putting together a nonprofit organization that kind of had its birth on the set. We was writing down these thoughts and ideas at that point, and how to help people that are going through hard times. And because it's like, that is the story of Jesus. We all are suffering, and we need help, and we can't do it on our own. Right.
Well, that's the concept and the idea of community too, and really a big nexus of the Ogden way. I have a really strong belief that we have a level of self-determination that's required for us to achieve and to thrive and to strive in life, but that we also need to remember that we're not alone. Not only are we not alone, but we're surrounded by others, and we are a city that wraps our arms around each other.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of our time, in fact, the meeting before we came here was that exact thing. How do we scale support to the community scale and to help people meet their needs in real time, and not just do it in events or moments, but in every single day. And that's called, what you're talking about right now is setting aside your livelihood that you had before to go and pursue not just a passion, but your purpose. Right?
Yeah.
And when you can align those two things, your passion and your purpose, you can do incredible things. That's when people do their best work.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I had this realization that, like, because of our modern era, because of technology, and because of all the conveniences that we have, we can persist. We can, like, survive, and we can live in our house. We learned that in COVID, and things like that. We can just live in there. We don't truly, quote unquote, need anything. I can Uber eats my food. I can get. It used to be that, living in the first century or whatever, I'd go to the well to get my water. I'd go to the butcher to get my food, my meat. I'd have to kind of leave the house and go engage with the community. I'd have to participate with the people around me in order to survive, right? And it's not as much that way anymore, which is really part of why I think suffering has increased in a way. Like there's a lot more mental health problems, and we're more disconnected, and we're not as we're meant to be engaged with others, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's how we're designed, and so most of the things that we want in our lives, we have to now add it in. I was mentioning exercise. It's like it used to be that I would just live.
You'd get
There'd be no exercise, no gyms. You'd be going carrying bales of hay or water or whatever it is, but now if I want that thing in my life, I have to add it in. That includes faith too, and community and those relationships. And I built some really, in fact, since filming the show, probably that's impacted me maybe in a deeper way than even the career change and things like that is. It's opened some conversations with some friends that live on my street. There's, friends we had a relationship prior. We were buddies before, but it's opened up a deeper conversation. We can bridge that gap and start talking about faith and what we believe and some of these things in a way that we never have before. And it's really been beautiful in that sense. Because I think, we're superficial a lot of the times. We're just like, oh, how was the game? Or, you're just talking about the top level, but there's this whole layer underneath that's kind of left.
It's the difference between living and being alive.
Yeah.
Like you can get along and do your thing and live in your house and live your life, or you can get out and be amongst others and to learn and to grow and to become deeper in our understanding and in our faith. And that's how you can truly become alive and live a life of purpose, right?
Yeah, and purpose comes through service. I think that when you give, when you serve.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the only way that you get there.
That's why the Ogden way is built on service. And for me, when I think about service, it's like not only is that the Ogden way, not only is that God's way, that is the fundamental way of bettering one another's lives, including our own. Yeah, surprisingly, the more you give, the more you get, right? And there's nothing political about that. And that's why service is the absolutely overriding value of our administration. It's because it's not about politics, it's about people. And you can get to the root of us if you do it through service. And you get to know each other better when you serve together. Yeah. And when you serve one another, right?
Everyone wants to be less divided. Everyone wants to be there to be less conflict, because peace feels better. Peace is happier. And you don't really get there until you what are the needs of this person? I don't know them. Well, I got to know them first. So I got to get to know them so I can know their needs, so then I can serve them. And when you do that, it opens you up in a way that you don't get, through other means. Yeah.
So Chandler, you talked a little bit before we wrap up. You talked a little bit about the nonprofit. You mentioned it. Are you ready to talk more about it, or do you want to hold on that?
I could share a little bit about it, and I'm sure there's more to go into detail. We're a very early stage. In fact, it came actually, like I said, as a part of this experience, and then me just seeking, how is it that I need to, rather than me deciding what I want to do with my life or what I want to do next, I shifted that approach and I started asking, what should I do, right? And what I got from that was, there are a lot of people going through hard times, and it was interesting. I have had a period of reflection over the last couple of years, really the last year and a half, thinking about my own parents, how that I grew up in a middle-class family, pretty normal circumstance. I remember when we moved back here to Utah, I lived Idaho, Washington. We moved a lot, but I was actually born here in Ogden. So, that's my
just throwing that out there.
I started out here, just throwing it out. But ended up coming full circle, right? And we moved here to Utah. My parents were, from a financial standpoint, doing fine, doing okay, and then doing better than ever, kind of slowly growing, and then had a couple of really tough calamities hit, and ended up losing their home, ended up, really their relationship became really difficult. It became strained and difficult for the whole family. They ended up really kind of sliding back kind of into into poverty, and I had this kind of understanding, realization that there's a lot of individuals that find themselves in that exact same pattern of difficulty that I think is preventable. I think that when we can support people that are going through hard times, particularly the middle class, all of us start out impoverished for the most part. We're college students. We're poor college students.
Hopefully you're in college.
Yeah, right. Well, fair enough. Yeah, most of us start out though with pretty much nothing, and as young people, we start to grow something, and you make some decisions throughout that hopefully you get better and better off. And I think more than half our state is kind of in that middle class range, right? And but so many are like at a razor's edge between doing okay and
one
really
event or mishap away, like you mentioned of your parents.
Yeah, and I've witnessed that now with so many other individuals. And anyway, so we're putting together an organization. Rise to Adventure is the name of the organization. We're trying to sort of reframe this, suffering and hardship as like an adventure. If you get your buddies together, and you build a fellowship, if you will, you go get the ring to Mordor or whatever it is, kind of it changes the way you think and feel about the hardship you're going through when you can reframe it as an adventure. It has purpose. It has a cause. And so we're putting together a program that will do like a support group type structure for those that are going through hard times. You can imagine, four families all coming together, mom and dad are, going through something really rough, whatever it is, and they can kind of come together with others and all in person, right? And
Sure.
kind of intimate and build some relationships. You have now, it's everything we've been talking about. You're able to serve, and through that process, you're gaining a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Even though you're going through something really rough, like you're able to help others. And so we're working on that, and then we have another. We're actually going to do something kind of similar from the video, like a media perspective. We're going to create we're going to call a kind of a podcast, but more like video series called Dark Before the Dawn, and really highlight the difficulties that people have gone through and their stories.
Before the breakthrough.
Where they got to break through and
Cool.
get to the dawn. So
if there's anything we can do to help you, let us know.
I will.
I want to, before I go to my call to action, I want to thank you for something.
Mm-hmm.
You might find this weird. If you do, I'm sorry, but I'm not.
No worries.
That night when we were talking in the parking lot,
Yeah.
I was in a place where this job's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not complaining about that. I'm not the victim of anything. This is what I asked for. But it requires that you do a lot of self-work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm always kind of investing in self, and whether it's exercise or better nutrition or trying to get better sleep and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that I'm spiritually fit, etc. But I remember at the time, I had just started to watch The Chosen because I was like, oh man, I keep hearing about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got a few episodes in when we met, and then you and I talked about it in the parking lot, and I was like, I got to watch more of that, and let's get you on the podcast. And so I felt like I had an assignment to do. But when I look back on it, I was at a time where I needed to go back and revisit my faith, because I told you I was born and raised Catholic. I married an LDS woman, and we had never squared up on those differences.
Yeah.
But there's lots of similarities.
Yeah.
And those beliefs never changed. So since we met, me starting down what I thought was just an assignment ended up being an important journey. And it makes you wonder, like you said, where something happened for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I really credit you in that night that we met for me to really strengthen my journey and go back and rediscover and revisit my faith and strengthen my foundation, because I've needed it. And it's benefited me a ton in my life. And I want to thank you for just showing up for your neighborhood on the issue that you did and doing what you do and having so much grace that night toward me, when often in that setting there's not a lot of grace. And then having the grace to talk to me afterward and share your journey and then help push me on my own. Because it's been, I don't know how many months that's been.
Yeah.
Quite a few months.
It has, yeah.
But it's been an important intervening months for me.
That's cool.
And so I feel a lot more settled. I've had a lot more forgiveness. There's a lot of people out there that are hating on me a lot. It just comes with the job. It's not based on facts oftentimes. But the thing that's strengthened me the most is just forgiving them. And so I want to thank you for playing a part when I know you didn't know that. But like that, those are the things that happen with us.
Yeah.
When you just go on your journey, you follow faith, you know that there's a plan, you know there's a bigger purpose, and you have experiences, and then you look back on it and you're like, whoa, that was profound. That was really important.
Yeah, it's the the Chinese proverb of, the butterfly wing that causes the hurricane, like
the butterfly effect. And
I think that we don't know what we can do if we have help. I kind of have a general idea of what I can accomplish in my life on my own. But if we are seeking help from beyond, whether that is the community, the people around us, that our friends or loved ones, in addition to that, a higher power, a higher, support, it turns out he can magnify, he can make way more of us than we can make of ourselves.
For sure. Chandler Copenhaver, thanks for coming back. Thanks for sharing your story with me, sharing your story with Ogden. I really look forward to seeing more, now that you're an enormous movie star.
Yeah, huge.
No, I really appreciate your contribution to The Chosen and to the telling of the story. But it's fun that we have people here in our own community, you guys, that are contributing to these kinds of things. It's just a really small world, but it's also a small example of the significance of the contributions of the people of the city. We do not give ourselves enough credit for the work that we do and the contributions that we put in the world from people of this town. You can look back in history and see that titans of industry started here, and the major innovations and the way they've affected world wars and geopolitical outcomes.
The railroad,
right, all of those things. Ogden has had a huge contribution to the history and the world that we live in.
I think it's what drove me to this new decision, the nonprofit, all these things, is because I realized I'd been working with people all over the world, worked with entrepreneurs, and I didn't really know many of the people right next to me, and didn't really know the businesses working close by. And this is where my kids are growing up. This is where where we live, and we've loved the area, but I haven't fully invested myself into what's next to me, what's around me. And so that was actually part of the motivation, is realizing that we live in an awesome place. Like,
we do.
Ogden really is amazing.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And you've made it better. You're making it better every time, everything that you're doing. And so thank you for your contribution to telling the story, to your contribution to Ogden, for sharing your faith today, for sharing your faith with me that night. And one of the teachings of Jesus is to make sure that you're teaching others and making sure that you're strengthening the faith in others, and that's something that you've done for me too. And I hope that this episode does it for others too.
Yeah.
And so I like to end every episode on a call to action.
Okay.
So if you found any of this conversation interesting, there's probably people that are like, "Rah," and they just dismiss. But these conversations maybe aren't for everybody.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday they are. But if you have any interest in exploring this, The Chosen is something that can really change your journey and change your faith. And even if you're not on that same journey, it is a really important story for learning how to live and the kind of values that are good for humanity universally. So even if you don't feel like you have to have a religious strength or a faith following, these are good lessons for life, right?
Yep.
And the show reinforces those. So if you're out there hurting, you're out there suffering, I know that we all have that. That's another way to reach out. So
absolutely. And
when you get to season 5, look for Chandler. I found myself I went into it. It's like, okay, I gotta look for Chandler.
Yeah.
But I was so into the story, I would just see you when
I'm doing my job correctly.
Oh, there he is. There he was.
Yeah. If I'm doing my job correctly, you'll just become a part of the environment. Right.
There you go. But I hope you enjoy the show, and I'll be getting more into the Promised Land when I'm done with season 5. Good. But it sounds like I'll be done with season 5 when season 6 starts.
Right.
So, but the Promised Land looks to be very promising and very entertaining in completely different ways. But Chandler, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That's another episode of the Ogden Way podcast, a place where we tell Ogden stories by telling the stories of Ogden's people. Today we've told the story of Chandler, and get out there and do good things. Let's make Ogden the best place that it always could be. So God bless you all.
Thank you.